Welcome to part three of an extended Cordus Conversation with conductor, singer, and master teacher Cailin Marcel Manson. In part one, we talked about running music programs, leadership, community singing, and COVID-19. In part two, we talked about choirs online and singing and performance philosophies. The conversation continues.
All do.
All right, and so you know what? You've given me the segue that I was looking for there. Let's talk about George Floyd, and let's
Mm.
talk about all that has ensued, and let's talk about the choral communities. I think well-intentioned. I certainly attempt to broaden our thinking. I don't know how good a job we're doing about it as an overall community, but I think there's at least a recognition that we need to do something here.
Well, it's no, it's like when I do that, it's like, oh, come on, and I sense the celestial, the astral flame retardant suits start to come down. But I'm just gonna say some things.
I want you to know that I saw the suit come down.
It's like,
Yeah, come on. So you just go on, brother. You talk.
I just have a feeling. I completely, first of all, the choral community is, again, a microcosm of a larger thing, right? There is a reckoning happening, and and it's actually not just classical music. It's really easy to focus on that because as a culture, as a commodifying culture, we look at like contemporary stuff like hip hop and pop and R&B and modern art, digital art, film score. We Because those are more commercially viable, we tend to assume we make the false assumption that just because they're doing commercially well that they have got something figured out that we don't.
I like.
When when you will still see, what was it, H&M or something like that, like H&M a year ago did a new fashion, like they're releasing their new thing, and they had a dark skinned boy with the t-shirt that said coolest monkey in the jungle on it.
Yeah.
There's still myopia there. Just because they make more money doesn't mean that they got something we don't. So these are all, it's actually all connected. It's a societal problem. One. Two, of course, there's a lot of rethinking about what is the canon and what should be in it, and how do we expand it and broaden it and do this and do that and make sure there are more voices present, and more voices, different composers of color, and indigenous composers, women composers. I mean, and that's all good. Like, that's not unnecessary. That's very necessary, right? But and I'm putting a big but on that.
I'm backing up. Hold on. Hold on. I'm backing up a little bit. Go
But
ahead.
a whole lot of people don't even know what the canon was anyway.
Yeah. Yeah.
There's a whole lot of stuff that's in the canon that doesn't get done.
Yeah.
One. And then on top of that, as we broaden the canon, it doesn't make any difference if we broaden the canon if we don't actually hand over the destructuring and the proliferation and the professing of the canon and of standards to people who don't look like who decided what the canon was to begin with. Period. End of story. You can do as many black composers as you want, as many composers who are women as you want. But until we see some major music directors, artistic directors, presidents, executive directors of companies that look like those people and that are given the influence they deserve and I'm going to put another thing on it. And how about choosing them from places you don't expect them to come from?
Mm. Yeah.
One of the things, it's a great. I mean, and this is not. I'm at a point now, in I'm not old or by any stretch of the imagination, but I'm at a point now where it's just like it's not so much about promoting the work I do or have done, but I've seen far too many people. Some of them, and I'm just going to be some of them white, right? Who have literally gone where angels fear to tread in this industry and have spent their entire lives there and have done excellent work and have never gotten the due that they deserve for that. It's, and that's another part of the problem. It's going to take a whole lot more work. Like somebody who came up and was a rising star, that's great. They have a lot of talent. But there are a lot of people who are truly excellent leaders and musicians and know how to build communities and know how to gather people around this thing we love that didn't come out that way. And y'all ain't uplifting them at all, no matter what they look like. And that's, to me, the larger issue. We don't do our art form any real favors if we don't decentralize and destabilize the power structure and the value system by which we analyze, assess, hire, and retain talent. We don't do ourselves any favors. It's a half measure. It's a half measure. You want more diverse voices up there, then stop getting a bunch of people who have a bunch of terminal degrees, who went to conservatories, to be leaders. Get somebody who literally has just a baccalaureate but knows how to teach people. Give them a major music directorship. Imagine what somebody who knows how to get a bunch of people that don't that they with somebody who knows how to gather a bunch of people who didn't get a gold engraved invitation to the party to identify with being classical musicians or loving this music or loving this art form. Imagine what might happen the minute you put them in front of, you give them the resources and the tools. Imagine what they would do. Because they work miracles all the time. It ain't no. I'm sorry. You can get a mediocre conductor up in front of a world class orchestra, and it will still be an excellent performance. That's not a miracle.
Yeah.
It's not a miracle. If you got a bunch of people who have been self-selected, auditioned so that they all have a certain level of ability, and you get somebody who's marginally able to wave their hands and keep tempo, you're going to have something that sounds like a score, regardless of how expressive or non-expressive they are. But if you get somebody who literally, by the very nature of the work they've done all their life, has been working miracles day in and day out, and you give them the resources, and you give them the platform, and you give them the ability to tell people how they've done what they've done, that will change the game. That's my soapbox. And I think that the example of somebody, a colleague and dear friend of mine, spoke about this on the. It's actually a clip that they excerpted because it was so powerful on the panel with the Dallas Opera Network that I was in. I think it was back in May, and she said, George Floyd was to all intents and purposes, like in a societal sense, was a nobody. He was a guy from around the way. Yeah. And it took an atrocity for his name is when people, That was what was so interesting. Like when they were talking about who was going to be like Time Magazine's Person of the Year, whatever, and ended up being Joe Biden, whatever. And then they said the racial movement. I was like, no, they have names. His name is George Floyd. Her name is Breonna Taylor. His name is Ahmaud Arbery. His name is Tamir Rice. His name is Trayvon Martin. See, that's the other thing. We were conditioned. We knew what happened to George Floyd because we had been conditioned since Trayvon Martin.
Yes.
5 years ago to pull out a phone every time somebody with skin darker than the shade of mocha latte comes into contact with law enforcement. We have been conditioned because there wasn't any phone footage for that case. And so we have been seeing these things because we're in the conditioning is new. We have to document these things. And so now this person who would have been seen essentially probably spent a great deal of his life having been seen as not important has been raised to irrelevance because of this tragedy. And the lesson, aside from race relations and all that, is why are we not uplifting that which we think is not important? Why are we not taking the people who are working, who are doing the grassroots work in music, and elevating them to places of influence and importance? That is our lesson. Otherwise, all you're doing is you're maintaining the same elitist hegemonic structure and just creating a less color coordinated cast of characters. But the power structure is still the same.
In Blazing Saddles, Mel Brooks has all of them sit around the table and they have to harumph to justify their phony baloney jobs. Harumph, harumph, harumph.
That one didn't harumph. I mean, it's just like, if all they're going to do is just harumph, it actually doesn't matter if they look like me or not. See, that's my whole point. That's the point. If the person looks like me, or the person is female or genderqueer or non-binary or whatever, and all they do when they get there is harumph, and if they don't harumph, you try to kick them out, then you haven't done the work.
So what can we do constructively, us little people?
Well, us little people. Well, the thing, so the thing that it's so funny, like I feel like what the little people can do, if you would call it the little people, the grassroots people can do, is I have said this. I said this 10 years ago. Longer than 10 years ago, we had a conversation about it, but this has been kind of my like rah 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 thing, where I've said, where vaccine or not, I've said the organizations and the people who will, and I'm even saying innovate, but who will be the first, the people who will be most able to, the quickest to be able to mobilize and make stuff happen as we come out of this are the grassroots organizations. And so we need to stop waiting for larger advocacy organizations and larger performing arts organizations to dictate to us what the standards should be and what they must be. And we need to take this as the chance, as the opportunity that's been long overdue, that frankly I knew was coming. It's just that COVID-19 sped it up. And actually be the standard bearers. We are the standard bearers. We set the tone. If they want to see, if the people up at the top tier want to see this resurgence, whatever of what, they need to get with us.
Yes, I love it. Yes.
They need to watch what we're doing, and we need to be about doing it.
All right, so then
and not waiting. So it's like, if you want to, if there's a way, if there's a piece that you've been dying to do, and you can only get 12 people together to do it, but they can do it, and they're willing to spend a couple months learning it because maybe they don't read music, but we should do it.
Would you and
Get
I
public access TV to film it. You know, I mean, it's just like those type of things.
you and I talked the other day. I made a note about something you said here about the imperfections, or what are right now what makes it beautiful.
Yes.
Well, I like that a lot.
That is what I feel like the little people the that we actually have to adopt. It's not, and it's not, you know, to be, it's not being like nonchalant or like we don't care if it's good, or that, you know, we don't care about what form it takes. It's not a lack of caring. It's a lack of being so cautious. I mean, we have to be cautious about like health and distancing and stuff like that. Got that. That's not what I'm saying. But we need to not be so cautious about waiting for someone else to say this is what we should do. And we so easily do that. Right? We so easily do that. We're just like, "Oh, I mean, just like with the virtual choir thing. Oh, this is what we should do. No, we don't have to do that.
Yeah. Yeah.
We should. You know, there are these pieces that have been written by these composers that we didn't know how to do it. It's like, well, okay, I get it. I get that. But you know what? Here's the thing. What matters to me most right now, like, you know, I'm surprised, maybe I will eventually, but I'm surprised that people didn't like come at, I mean, maybe it's because I am, you know, I have the right complexion. I don't know. People didn't come at me for like, why are your two choirs preparing Messiah? Well, you know what? I know what it's hitting for.
Yeah.
I'm in a predominantly white region. It doesn't get more white bread than New England. And I am a black artistic director. And trust me, I have programmed some shit over the last number of years that people, even if they didn't look like me, sometimes don't have the chutzpah to try.
Yes.
I've done Bernstein's Mass, the Verdi Requiem, Idomeneo, over the like Cherubini's Medea. You know, I've run the whole gamut. Benjamin Britten, like, come on. And at the same time, I'm like, look, we are in a time right now where it's not even just so much about getting people engaged, but we want people to feel their connection to it. So my goal is that I want them to be connected, and I want to dial down the pressure in some ways, but maintain the learning in other ways. So yes, we're gonna do Messiah. And you know why we're gonna do Messiah? Because every time I've done Messiah, especially with community groups, these people have sung Messiah many times over, longer than I've been alive. And many of them have not sung it correctly, period. Many of them have no idea what the other 2/3 of the score look like. That's what I'm saying when I say, that's another reason why I say, like, we're talking about expanding the canon. How many people don't even know what the darn canon is?
Yeah.
We're at, you know, I can't tell the first season, my first concert with the Cailin Chorale, we did Mendelssohn's Die erste Walpurgisnacht and the winter section of Die Jahreszeiten. First of all, and we did it in German. None of the choristers had ever sung this stuff, but you'd be surprised how the pro musicians had never played it. When GCC back in 2015 did Mendelssohn's Symphony No. 2, the Lobgesang, we had members of the Philadelphia Orchestra in our audience because they were on break from playing at the Man and at Saratoga or whatever. And they're like, oh, we had friends coming, and it's like, I wanted to, it's like, and yeah, I'm familiar with the piece, but I've been in the Philadelphia Orchestra 30 years, and I've never played this one.
Wow.
It's, Mendelssohn only wrote 5 symphonies.
Oh,
Do you understand what I'm saying? Like, there's so much in the Massenet Marie Magdalene that I did with GCC in 2013. That's a freaking amazing piece. No one knows it. No one knows it. So there's, I mean, and yes, are they work? Yes, they're white dudes. Fine, but there's still so much there, and a lot of people don't even. A lot of people who are supposedly the standard bearers of this thing don't even know what the standards are.
yeah. No,
And so another way of doing this, I said this a long time ago. It's like they're like, oh, we're gonna do blah 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 blah. We're gonna do yes. What was the Philly Orchestra doing? They were doing like, oh, they did, what was it called? They had, what did they say? They called it, they had like Now, N-O-W, and everything they attached to it. They were like, Women Now, Beethoven Now, right? I'm like, how about Black Now? Right? Like, and I'm not just talking about doing Florence Price. Like, at the end of the day, the Philly Orchestra can play every Beethoven symphony backwards and forwards because they are that darn good, and they're freaking amazing. But how about the fact that we actually, if you're going to do a Beethoven cycle, how about handing over the reins of the canon and getting a conductor of color up there for every concert of that cycle? That would have been innovative thinking. Do you understand what I'm saying? It's not just about expanding the canon. It's about handing over the canon.
I don't want to say it.
Sorry.
It's all good. What I'm thinking is I don't want to. I resist saying it's an insurmountable challenge, but what a freaking challenge! What a freaking challenge!
It's funny, because because some of, and it's some of it. I wouldn't say my opinion is unpopular. It's just that when I bring it up to people, like when I bring it up, especially amongst other Black artists, they're like, "Oh yeah," like it's like they're like, "Oh, let's not do like," they were like, "Okay, it was a Beethoven year. Let's not do. How about we not do any of the well-known Beethoven stuff for a while?" And I sat there and I'm like, "Okay, that's nice, but I'm just going to tell you, I'm not going to deny any Black conductor or any Black artist a chance to have their say with one of those war horses just because I want to be erudite." Because not enough Black artists of color, not enough of them have had a chance to truly have their say with those pieces, with those iconic pieces, for us to say that we need to retire them. We haven't heard everything that needs to be said. Because that's the thing. Because that's the argument, isn't it? Oh, we already heard these pieces. No, we haven't heard everything that needs to be said with those pieces yet. Because we haven't given them over to people who have to have their say. We have not done that. If you are, I'm sorry, I'm like, if you want to, and you want to do Beethoven 2, fine. But y'all still need to program Beethoven 5 and get a Black person up there to conduct it. Yes, that's what y'all need to do.
Yeah. Wow.
And that's what I mean when I say it's half measures. It's absolutely, we need to be uplifting and generating new art and supporting art from underrepresented and underserved populations and marginalized people in our society. But the other side of that is that we also need to be giving those people the power to say what it is they need to say through the already curated canon. Because then that's doing the other side of the work. And the other, like I said, just to double down again, the other side of that too is to bring those people up from channels where y'all aren't already looking.
Okay.
And it's a huge ask, but it actually isn't that hard. They just have to be willing, and this is the other side. This is the other thing. The other piece of that is if well this goes back to are we in the business of show or not?
Yeah.
Like if you get somebody up there who's relatively untested because they've never operated, maybe they've worked for a few years with a community orchestra, chorus, or whatever, and you're giving them that chance, and they have a bum performance. That's not the end of the world.
Yes. Okay. Yeah.
Is it more important? What is more important to us? If we really are about, and again, some people they talk about like being custodians of excellence. And I'm not saying that excellence isn't important, but we should be open to other people showing us what excellence could look like and what that could also mean.
There it is. There it is.
It might not be what we expect.
There
It might not be, maybe, maybe they do a piece that we've come to, identify with or whatever very differently than a way that we've ever heard from it. And we might not like everything they do with it. But does that mean that it wasn't excellent? No.
Very good.
And so we need to be open to the possibility. And that also does mean and people always step away from this. People want to they were like, "Oh, we want to do this and that." I'm like, "I'm sorry, I'm a realist. There are only but so many jobs in this market. That means that some of y'all going to have to give up your jobs. Sorry, not sorry. That means some people are going to need, if they are really down for it, they're going to need to be willing to step aside so that people who have not had their say get to. That is part of letting go of the privilege. That is part of decentralizing the power structure.
Wow.
And I'm unafraid to say it.
Wow.
I used to not say it because it's a really touchy issue, and people were like, "Well, I want to like there's seats at the table. There's enough room at the table for everybody." No, there's not. Stop telling that lie. Otherwise, there wouldn't be a table. It's not like all of a sudden there's more leaves we can put in it. No, when you're talking about operating, the whole nature of the business is that at the top, the table's only gonna there's only but so many jobs. There's only but so many positions. There's only but so much resources that are being allocated. So at the end of the day, there are only going to be so many seats.
Yeah.
When you're dealing with that. So if you're trying to redress the ills, you need to be willing to say, look, we actually aren't, there's no way we can create more seats at this table. So guess what? Either you're going to build a bigger building, which means, so that's what I mean. So metaphors. You're either going to build a bigger room with more tables in it for people to have a seat at, which means that table that everyone was at would have less influence.
Yeah.
So you're spreading the influence out and the resources and the power out, or you're just going to be asking people to stand up and go, so that people who should have a voice get to have a voice and get to have the influence and get to have the power. And to me, I am more interested in building a bigger room or having the table be freaking outside.
Yeah, okay.
In the countryside where there are a bunch of other ones.
Yeah.
Where everyone is at a table of their own. And people can round robin and go to different tables. They don't have to be at the same one. And it doesn't have to be in a room.
Yeah.
I advocate that But what that means is that the power, the amount of power, the amount of influence is diffused, and the resources are spread out. I've said since the beginning of this thing, since the beginning of this, that you look at that, you look at any top level organization, and you look at their level, like their donor lists. And some of them are corporate, and some of them are foundations, and some of them are individuals. And that some of these individuals, whether they're working through a foundation or not, are giving millions of dollars a year. These are yearly donations on those lists. They're giving millions of dollars a year. So that means, okay, a 1 million plus gift to one organization that they account gets them through their fiscal year. But if you look at the average community organization and what their budget is, especially if their budget is like $50,000 less, that one gift could power that organization for a generation.
Yeah. Yeah.
One.
Yeah.
So what are we doing? We have one thing that needs it to get through a year, or we can do, and to me, that's what I'm talking about when I say community impact. That's what I mean when I say community impact. Are we interested in having the bright, shiny thing that not everybody goes to for 1 year? Or are we more interested in the business or in the work of making sure it's really available and in the face, working with the people in these communities without the fetters of constantly having to scrape by for a generation, for 15 years?
Yeah. Okay.
And so those are the questions that I pose whenever I'm, in a room with people who who at least pretend that they want to hear what I have to say. I'm just like, I'm like, look, I'm just going to call it what it is. I'm not saying that I'm against any of these. I have colleagues that work at many of these institutions and many of these organizations. But at the end of the day, this is really like this is the caste system talking to us.
Bingo. Well, and how do I want to put this? It's easier for most of us to not acknowledge the caste system and simply play along. 'Twas ever thus, right? 'Twas ever thus. All right, look, I want to try and bring this in for a landing. We could go on.
Cool. That'd be good.
and what we may have to do is do this again. So I would like to offer you an opportunity to, it seems to be, before I even offer you that opportunity, you've brought us full circle. We started talking about community,
mm-hmm.
and here we are again, So I just want to make that observation. But I'd like to give you an opportunity to kind of, to give us a last word here, or some final thoughts or extension where you were going on this.
Well, so I think. Well, goodness, I think a great way to sort of wrap it up is It's not even about being personal as much as it is. It's just a reality. I think that. Listen, I can't even say I think. I know. I am a living example of what happens and what can occur when people are willing to take chances. And I'm not talking about me personally. I'm just talking about when people are willing to take chance on an untested talent, when people are willing to think outside of the box of what might be expected. It is not lost on me. And as a matter of fact, some of the earliest, I wouldn't even call them roused, but some of the early kind of let me put my foot down as an artistic head of an organization or something like that is that where, and I know this is part of the work too. This is part of the work. This is part of the forgiveness part of the work. Is that I recognize that even for the community choruses that I work with, when they asked me to be their music director, that the very fact that they were asking me to be their music director was a decision upon their search committee and their board that they wanted to do something different. That they didn't even know what it was,
Yeah.
but they wanted to try.
Yeah.
And it's not always been easy. And there are tons of challenges and a lot of stepping into these spaces when those decisions are made is that you, both myself and the organizations, learn what it means to have a person like me or a person like this in the position, and what the continuing work therefore the continuing work that has to be done. And so, you know, I look I the connectivity of those two things is not lost to me. And I'll also say that when we first met, when we first met, you know, I just I think there is not I it's just it's I don't think enough real credence is given to the magic that the magic that happens on I'll just say this, close to the ground.
Mm.
You know, we hear from so many of the artists I have grown to admire. Some of them, you know, I admired them as when I was young. I've grown up and they've become colleagues. Some of them are dead and gone. They all talk, right, about having people who believed in them very early on,
Mm.
people who saw their talent when they didn't see it themselves, or someone who can encourage them. You know, I have seen the beauty. I think we all have, if we believe it, if we really look, the beauty of what takes place when people are gathered together for common cause, especially when music is at the center of it. And I just don't think, and I don't think, not only is that not given the credence it deserves, but I don't think in this very stratified way of thinking that we've had. I hope that we step away from it, as I've said before, about not when we say, we've all said that, oh my God, it's invaluable. But then when we put it up, we don't measure it with that same measuring stick. We will say, like, oh my God, what happened here? So, like, you can't replace this. We're doing all of this work to try to maintain these invaluable bonds, these priceless bonds between these people. And yet, we're not willing, for some reason, we're not willing to champion it hardcore enough to say, this is priceless and therefore it must be supported, possibly even more so than the thing that looks shiny. And that to me, you know, and the relationship that I've had with you, you know, the relationship that I've had with so many other people, like, these are, you know, we can go, like I said, we can go a couple of years, like, with just Facebook Facebook stalking each other. But like I said, the bond is there, and you know, if for some reason you needed to call on me for something, and I, you know, you could do it,
Yeah.
and and those type the building and nurturing and having that kind of connective tissue be built and be regenerated, because I know some of it has been fractured by what we've gone through this past year. You know, that is so, like, that is so important. That is the challenge of our age, I think.
Yeah.
That is the challenge of this time, that some many people that many people who have the heart for this work, I hope, are starting to see. You know, I hate to get biblical about it, but one of those things I always I turn to. I actually I said this just yesterday to somebody. I'm like, let he who has ears hear.
Yeah.
Right? And it's not, and of course everybody has freaking ears, but you know, people exegete and talk about that thing all the time. It's you know, it's about, if are your ears open? Are you the message is there, but are you willing to hear it? And once you've heard it, you are responsible. You're responsible. Once you know, you're responsible. And your colleagues, your friends, your community can then hold you accountable for knowing. And I just, you know, I'm thankful for your friendship over the years. You know, I'm thrilled. You know, I who would have thought? Like, that's the other thing. Like, I know, like, something that just came. I mean, shoot, I remember you talking. We were in the Church of the Messiah parking lot and just talking about what was then just called Cordus East, right? And what that might be, and for it to have become, and you know, and like, but those are the things, like, that is what dreaming on the small scale can do.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
um, and it's just so it's so powerful and so rewarding, even when it drives us nuts. and and I hope, I really hope, over the next couple of years, I'm going to give it a short term, over the next couple of years, that we'll see some of that shift, um more so than the others. And that's probably where I'll leave it.
I can't think of a better place to leave it for this moment. My goodness. Yeah. You've left me pretty close to speechless, my dear friend.
That's hard.
So that's fairly rare.
I know. Come on, RBR talk.
Very much put your finger on it, and I think you've identified, very clearly identified the challenge, and in a kind of a gentle way, you have thrown the gauntlet down. I mean, there it is, you know. Um, and yeah, I hope and have the same hopes you do, that our both our choral community, our musical community, our community at large will look at some of this in a different way. And again, I'm struck by what's been the theme of our conversation, Cailin. It's been community.
Community.
I'm
Absolutely.
kind of struck by that. All right. Well, look, you've been inspirational, my friend. You really have. I'm grateful for the well. I'm grateful for your insight. I'm grateful for the way you think about things. You know. Now, I don't know what that says about me either, but all kidding aside, I think you've known this all along. I very much value your perspective on this, and you know the shit, man. You do. You do. You know the shit. There's very little question in my mind. Um, all right. I'm reluctant for us to end our conversation.
I know, but we'll keep talking.